If you're here, chances are you're working on your final essays for this term. My name is Grażyna Bielosova, and I will be your guide through the process. So stay with me, and at the end, you will understand how to create an essay that is going to get you the kind of grade that you imagine you should get at the end of this term. So after we are done today, you will understand how to do three things. First of all, you will be able to say what an academic essay is and what it is not, and that will help you with evaluating your own work. The second thing that you will know is you will know how to outline your essay writing process. You will be able to plan out the process of writing a good essay. And finally, if you stick with me, you should be able to implement these steps of essay writing in practice to produce academic work. So let's start right here. What is an academic essay? To put it briefly, an academic essay is an answer to a question or a prompt that was given to you as an assignment. Sometimes you have to craft the question or the prompt yourself and then answer it. But the more clear the question is and the more clear the answer is, the better the final product. The goal of an academic essay is to show what you have learned, that is to showcase your knowledge, the content, as well as your analytical skills. Do you know what this content means? Can you contextualize it? Do you understand its importance? We have learned what an academic essay is. Now let's look at what it is not. The things that I'm going to say are true for academic writing in English-speaking Western-style universities. The fact that you may be doing some of these things does not mean that you write poorly. It means simply that you have learned to write in a different context. So I advise you to keep those writing skills that you have and supplement them with what you're going to learn here. In an English-speaking Western-style university, an academic essay is not a poetic or artistic masterpiece. And what I mean by that is that while we value beautiful language, while we value elegant structure, we are not looking for primarily your artistic ability. We are looking for clarity and display of your knowledge. Also, when writing an essay, what we are asking you to do is we're asking you to be writer responsible, which means that it is your job not to make us think about the topic, but your job is to show how you think about the topic. For this reason, I advise students to stay away from such rhetorical devices as rhetorical questions or ellipses or other ways to quote unquote make the reader think or to evoke deep emotion in a reader. This kind of writing has its place, but it is not academic writing. We're looking for neutral language and we're looking for your ability to enter into a measured conversation on the topic. Said that academic essays are not a display of everything you might know on the subject. We are impressed that you know a lot, but we are even more impressed when you can funnel that information, when you can edit that information into a succinct and clear answer. That is, can you apply critical filters to understand which information is most useful in meeting the criteria of the assignment? In order to be clear, you will have to have structure in your essay, which means that essays are not free-flowing stream of consciousness where you write as the spirit moves you or as your inspiration takes you. No, it is a much more pre-planned process in where you have an idea of what goes into each part of the essay. It might start as a free-form kind of writing, but then you're going to go back and edit it and bring in structure in order to make yourself clear and well understood. In doing so, you are not looking to repeat as much of the information as precisely as possible from what you heard in the lectures or what you read in the textbook. Rather, you are going to think about that information, filter it through yourself, and use it to display your own thinking. Think about what you read and think about what you heard as building blocks. Building blocks that then you create and fashion into the kind of structure that you envision in your head in order to answer the question. I said at the beginning that I am going to give you 6 steps to writing an essay, and here they are. You start with reading and understanding the assignment, which is the foundation for all the other steps that are going to follow. Then, based on what the assignment asks you to do, you plan out your response. You craft your thesis statement, and we're going to talk about that, but your thesis statement is going to be the backbone, the main argument of your essay. Then you write your introduction in which you contextualize your argument. You build your body paragraphs, which advance your thesis, which show as evidence of what you are saying. And finally, you conclude your essay. I know that this sounds very basic, but you would be surprised how many essays we receive that are lacking one of these elements: understanding of the assignment, a clear plan, a thesis statement, or any of the compulsory academic essay components: introduction, body paragraphs, and conclusion. If you have all of that, you're well on the way to writing an excellent essay. Let's start with reading and understanding the assignment. What you see here in front of you, and you can pause the video to read this, is an assignment, the exact assignment for my Intro to Social Theory class. When you look at this, you see a lot of words, and initially it may feel overwhelming. What I suggest doing is reading the assignment closely and highlighting or underlining key phrases. What are the key requirements that this assignment asks you to do? If this were me, this is what my highlighted version of the assignment would look like. Here are the key requirements that I need to do. I need to answer 3 questions in a standard essay format. Each of the answers has to be between 900 and 1100 words, and I need to use Harvard style manual. Okay, so now in my head, I have a clear vision of what I am to do. I need to write 3 standard essays that are relatively short, so I'll need to be concise, that would answer 3 questions that I chose from the 10 that were given to me. And I need to find a specific citation and formatting guidelines. Let's move on. In the scenario where you are given a choice on what you can write about, or where you can craft your own topic, you want to think about the following. What is it that you understand best? Think about the whole term, the whole semester. Which topics did resonate with you the most? which ones you felt like you have the clearest understanding. Have you done any previous work on any of these assignments? In my Intro to Social Theory class, some of you may have done some work in seminars on activities that are related to particular questions, or you may have written 3-minute reflections based on a certain topic. Maybe you have really good notes for a particular topic and not so good for other ones. Also, what interests you the most? What would you like to learn more about? What would you like to figure out at a deeper level? Those are all good questions for determining what kind of essays, what kind of topics you are going to pick. Now, I'm not going to go into any specific assignments that I have given this term to my students. But instead, I will invent a topic, I will invent a question that I want to write about. So here is my question that I will consider for our hypothetical essay. Does Edward Said's understanding of Orientalism apply to Eastern Europe? Explain. The same way as I did with the actual assignment prompt. I'm going to take the essay question and I'm going to highlight key terms. By doing that, I will make sure that I address these terms specifically in my essay and I don't miss any important parts of the assignment. So in this case, I'm asked to talk about a particular thinker, Edward Said. I'm asked to address his understanding of Orientalism, and I'm asked to apply this understanding to Eastern Europe. 3 key terms: Edward Said, Orientalism, Eastern Europe. Once I have done that, I can move to planning out my essay to step number 2. The way that I think about planning an essay is the way that I think about building a really good hamburger. So in order to build a good hamburger, you need a bun that is split in 2. And in the middle, you are going to have all the fillings that go into the hamburger. You're going to have your meat patty, you're going to have your tomato, you're going to have your lettuce, right? So think about your introduction and conclusion as the hamburger patty. The same way as the top part of the bun is connected to the bottom part of the bun, your introduction and conclusion are going to be related to each other. But they alone don't make for an essay. They just hold it together. What makes a hamburger? It is the tomato, the lettuce, and the meat patty. So these are your paragraphs. What goes in between the bun are your paragraphs. That is where the hamburger is. Now, I have done all that. I can then move to thinking about what am I going to fill this rough structure with? What is going to be my content? I would start by jotting down everything that I can remember about the 3 key terms that I highlighted. What do I remember about Edward Said? Who was he? What did he do? Why is he important? Why did we even read him? In what context did we read about him? What is Orientalism? Oh, we read for class this book called Orientalism. Okay, perhaps I need to pull out whatever I remember about Orientalism. And finally, Eastern Europe. Okay, what do I know about Eastern Europe, especially as it relates to Said and to Orientalism? Once I have written down everything that I remember from memory, I would turn to my class and seminar materials. Do I have notes from the lectures? Do I have lecture recordings? Do I have access to PowerPoint slides? What do I have from seminars and discussions? Are there materials that are related to that? Did I take notes on those? Finally, I would go back to the text itself. I'm asked to address a specific text and a specific thinker, so I would go to the text. I would reread it and take notes on what is the main argument, what are the key points, what are the definitions and the terms, what kind of quotations can I use in order to answer this particular question. If you did that while reading the text the first time, good for you. You will only need to reread. If you do not have notes, this is the point where you're going to take notes on the text. When you have your notes ready, the ones that you remembered from memory, the ones that you compiled from your class materials and seminar materials, and the ones that you created based on the reading, you are going to narrow those notes down and start funneling them into the structure. Look at the notes that you have in front of you. What is important out of everything that you have to understand in order to answer the question? What material is directly related to the question that was asked? If you were to answer this and make 3 points, this is what I think and this is why, 1, 2, 3. What would your 3 points be based on your notes? And finally, how would you explain why all of this matters? What is the significance of your answer and what is the significance of the terms? Now, let's go back to our hamburger format and let's start putting in things where they belong. In your introduction, this is where you will want to shuffle your notes that have to do with background information and definitions. Your introduction is going to lead to your thesis statement, which is your one sentence answer to the question. And we're going to talk about your thesis in the next step. Think about the points that you would make to answer the question. Why do you think this way? For each point that you have written down, what material belongs under each point? Or maybe you need to go back and find more information on that particular point. And finally, your answer as to why this is important is going to go under conclusion. When you have your rough outline with the material that belongs under each point, you can begin crafting your thesis statement. Like I said before, your thesis statement is a one-sentence condensed answer to the question or the prompt. If the question is whether I think that Said's Orientalism applies to Eastern Europe, my answer will be along the lines of, I think that Said's understanding of Orientalism either applies or does not apply to Eastern Europe because the thing about your thesis statement is that it needs to be arguable. Somebody needs to be able to say, I think differently. So here's an example of a good and a bad thesis statement. Let's start with the bad one. Eastern Europe is a part of the European subcontinent. Nobody's going to argue with that. Of course it is. You look at a map, you look at any map, and here it is. Eastern Europe is part of the European subcontinent. There's nothing to be argued about. Now, if I say that Edward Said's understanding of Orientalism can be used at least in part to understand Eastern Europe, I can imagine people who will push back against this. Somebody may argue differently. Somebody may completely disagree with me. Okay, that works better. The goal of your thesis statement is to hold and focus your essay. Think about it. If it is the backbone, your other arguments, your body paragraphs are the ribs. If there's no backbone, the rib bones just fall into one big pile. That's just a mess. The more clear, the more direct, And the more to the point your thesis statement is, the better. Here I have a very basic formula that is going to help you write a good thesis statement for any class. Okay? And here is how the formula goes. A thesis statement equals subject matter plus controlling idea plus rationale. Let's translate that into English. Subject matter, in essence, is what this is about. So somebody asks you, what are you writing your essay about? And I say, I'm writing about Edward Said's understanding of Orientalism. Ta-da! Here's my subject matter. My controlling idea is what I'm going to say about my subject matter. How am I understanding this? So my controlling idea may be that Edward Said's definition of Orientalism, my subject matter, applies at least in part to Eastern Europe. And then rationale. Why? Or how? Because just like the Orient, Eastern Europe is also an imagined space. You can use this, like I said, for any essay, for any assignment, and this is going to help you narrow down and figure out what it is that you are doing and produce excellent thesis statements. Here, for illustration, you can see how I broke down my thesis statement. If you need to pause the video here and figure out what your own thesis statement needs to be, you can do that here. When our thesis is at least 85% finished, we can move to writing an introduction. For crafting introductions, I have a really fun formula. I like formulas, can you tell? And my formula for introduction is ABCD. Author, background, connection to thesis, and definitions. A, B, C, D. Author. So in this case, what can I say about Edward Said? Not too much. This essay is not about Edward Said. It is about his understanding of Orientalism. So what kind of basic information do I need to bring in about Edward Said? Background information. When and why did he write Orientalism? Connection to your thesis. Why am I bringing this particular thinker and this particular work into conversation with my topic? And definitions. What is this Orientalism that I'm talking about? Different professors will have different preferences for how your introduction needs to be structured. My own preferred version is funnel. That is, we start with the general information and we go narrower and narrower in order to connect it to the thesis statement. So we start from broad and we zoom in on the exact topic that we're going to be addressing in the essay. Some professors prefer the opposite. They prefer that you start with a direct answer to the question that is with your thesis statement, then contextualize it, and then move to the rest of the essay. If your professor has not given you any particular instructions about that or their preferences, do what works best for you. Here you see an example of my introduction that I would write for the essay based on our imagined question. Feel free to pause the video and read through this. I have color-coded different bits of information, A, B, C, D, in different colors that correspond to the previous slide. So, information about the author, A, is in orange. Information about basic background, B, is in green. My definition is in purple, and my connection to my thesis is in blue. The thesis itself is in red. Note that you do not have to follow the exact order of A, B, C, D, but you do need to have all the elements in place. Do not start on step 5 until you have completed step 4. You cannot craft your paragraphs until you have your thesis. Remember, the ribs without the backbone are just a pile of bones, not a skeleton. When you have your thesis statement ready, you can step into step 5 and develop your essay. Here are some things to remember about the paragraphs. Each paragraph needs to contribute something to your thesis. It needs to be directly connected, and it needs to help you answer the question. Paragraphs are like steps to answering the question. So what 3 significant steps would you take to get your reader to see your point? If I say that Orientalism applies to Eastern Europe because it is an imagined space, what kind of steps would I need to take? Perhaps here are my steps. I would explain how West has imagined the Orient. I would explain how Eastern Europe is also imagined, and then I would draw the parallels between the two geographic places. That would be my approach. Let's go to the notes that we have for my first point. What do my notes say? Let's take a quick look. I have all kinds of scribbles here that Orient is Western imagination rather than a real place, that Palestine, China, India, and Egypt are very different, but they are called the Orient, that they occupy a similar place in Western imagination, that they are portrayed as exotic, despotic, irrational, inferior, sexualized, and fantastic, and that these images are perpetuated in art, literature, travel, writing, and sciences. Okay, so this is my beginning. Now I'm going to see how I can put it all together into a much more coherent explanation of what I mean. When I think about building a good paragraph, I think of inviting the main idea of the paragraph for T. That is, each paragraph needs to have a topic sentence, an expansion, some kind of evidence to support it, and analysis and interpretation. So, your topic sentence is like a mini thesis, a one-sentence articulation of your main idea for this paragraph. Your expansion is going to open up your topic sentence and explain what you mean. Your evidence will support your ideas, and evidence will come from the text that you're analyzing or from some kind of empirical data. And your analysis and interpretation will show how you see your evidence fitting into your argument, because the same kind of data can be interpreted by 2 different people very differently. And whose responsibility is it to interpret the data? Yours, not the reader's. Here is an example that I like to use about how data can be interpreted differently. If I say that it is 10 degrees outside, this is correct information. But for somebody who is sensitive to cold like myself, this may mean that it is cold outside. For somebody who arrived from the country where it's minus 20, it might mean that it is warm outside. How does data, how does information, how do quotations that you have from the text work for your argument? It is your job to say why they work and how they work. After some thought, this is the topic sentence that I came up with for my first paragraph. Orientalism, according to Said, re-entrenches Western centrism rather than representing the Eastern countries it aims to describe and analyze. Okay? So if this is my topic sentence, I need to test it to make sure that it's going to do the kind of work that a topic sentence ought to do. So I will ask it, is it explicitly connected to my main thesis statement? Let's look at it. Yes, Orientalism. Yes, Said. Yes, it talks about how the West imagines the East rather than actually analyzing it. Does it help me make my case? Yes, I think it does. It's a necessary first step for me to show further how it's going to connect to Eastern Europe. Does it have one main idea I can develop in the paragraph? I think so. I think I can do this in one paragraph. I can do this in about 6 or 7 sentences. Good. If you need to pause here, pause and try experimenting with your own topic sentence. Now, when you have your topic sentence, you can move to the other elements. So the first element is expansion. Based on my notes, how can I elaborate on this? I might say that there's a pre-existing assumption that the West is normative, that any kind of difference that Westerners encounter in their colonial voyages is seen as hierarchical. That is, that if you're different, you're worse than me. I might say that the colonized land is seen as Europe's negative other. Whatever Europe is, the colonies are going to be not that. And the colonized lands always function as this sort of Europe's affirmation that Europe does things right while colonies don't do them right at all. Once I have that built in, I'm going to move to evidence. Can I find a quotation, an example from Said's Orientalism that shows that this is really so? What does Edward Said say about it himself? And finally, analysis. How can I connect the idea that I'm developing and my data to support it together? When put together, what does it all mean? What is the significance of the evidence in light of the topic sentence? Once again, you see that I have color-coded this information here. In the next slide, you will see the way that I have developed a paragraph based on these questions and this structure. And the colors are going to correspond. When I move to the next slide, feel free to pause, go back, and figure out how things work together. You will repeat the same process with all 3 paragraphs. You will want to then look over them and make sure that they are arranged in a logical fashion, that they work well between themselves, that you know all the fixings in the burger create a gourmet meal, and then you're ready to move to your conclusion. You have done all this work. Now, go out with a bang. In order to do so, bring me back to your thesis. Remember, if it's a hamburger, your introduction, where your thesis lives, and your conclusion need to work together. In order for them to work as a good bun that's going to hold the burger together, you are going to bring me back explicitly to your thesis in your conclusion. Then tell me, why does it matter? You have written about all these things. Why does it matter? Why is it important? What happens if we don't think about these things? What are the consequences? And there you have it. That's your conclusion. Sometimes students ask me, well, I feel like academic writing is really impersonal. I have no place to bring myself into it. Conclusion is a good place to do that. You have shown what you know. You have shown that you can analyze. You have shown that you can craft an argument. This is where conclusion can become a little bit more personal. If you need to, if you want to, at least from my class, you can also say what this topic means to you personally. So there you have it, a complete and beautiful paper, right? That paper still needs to be proofread, edited, formatted, checked for in-text citations, we don't want any plagiarism, and submitted. Easy. Oh, you also are going to need the front page and the bibliography page. Look for examples on the Moodle page, or look for the examples or guidelines that your professor has provided you in order to format this matter. So, see, that wasn't so hard. Keep calm and keep writing your essays.